Aloha, my name is Rebecca Arlander and I've been teaching social studies on the island of Oahu for the past 13 years. During this time, I briefly taught at a private school, but I spent the bulk of my time teaching in a Title I rural public school on the North Shore of our island and at a Title I public school in urban Honolulu. One thing my students have all had in common, no matter their background, is a lack of geographic knowledge and experience. My students are growing up in the most remote island chain in the world. We're literally not connected to anything, so it makes sense that they don't feel a connection to the rest of the world either. As a social studies teacher teaching adolescents, exposure is my main focus. When I was teaching high school, I used to take my rural North Shore Oahu kids to stay with host families in New England. It was such a shockingly different culture for them that a student literally said, "Miss, I didn't even know this was here," because the only option they had in their mind if they were going to leave Hawaii was to move to the West Coast. The next year, half of them applied to colleges in New England. In addition to the New England student exchange trip, I also took my students to London, Paris, Barcelona, and all over Italy. All places that couldn't be more different than their small town of Waialua, where there is only one blinking traffic light. Though I teach at a middle school in Honolulu now, and leaving the island with a bunch of 12-year-olds is a challenge, exposure is still my main focus. A few years ago, I started collecting postcards as souvenirs from trips I'd been on, and I post them on the wall in my classroom and pose the question to my students, where in the world do you want to go? And then at the bottom, challenge them, can you find it on our map? Exposure isn't just limited to awareness of the world outside Hawaii, but what is going on here as well. This year, for the first time, I got my students to participate in the Nat Geo Challenge. My students learned about plastics polluting our Northwest Hawaiian Islands, our beaches, and the Alawai Canal in our home watershed. Coincidentally, a bill detailing one of the most progressive single-use plastic bans in the country recently came up before our city council. My 7th graders made 40 phone calls to city councilors, submitted 100 pieces of testimony expressing their support for Bill 40, which ultimately passed and was signed into law. Watching my students push through the fear of calling city officials and the apathy of not feeling like they could make a difference was probably my favorite teaching moment of the past 13 years. The exposure to this process has helped them to feel more empowered than many adults. I feel confident that they are likely to continue to be civically engaged in the future. Mahalo.